Hey there, and welcome back. Today we're going to kick off a series on how to create a block WordPress theme now that full site editing is completely within WordPress. And to do that, we're going to walk through how I built my first block theme, Semplice Monospazio. And yes, naming WordPress themes is not my specialty. But anyway, this series we're just going to go through each of the different steps from the design to how to use the theme.json file to maybe some styling that you still kind of have to do to cover things like hover and focus states. And then we'll cover how to create block patterns, and from there we'll create the index template, the archive template, the single post template, the page template, and a few others. By the end of this, you should have a general idea about how to create a block theme. This theme doesn't have a whole lot of fancy features, but really we don't need that for right now. We're just trying to create a basic block theme, and maybe as time goes on and we learn more, we can add in new cool features to it. But before we begin, if you want to see the rest of this series, or you want to see more videos about how to do web development like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, and more, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the ring the bell for notifications. Now, let's get started. Okay, so before we begin, I do want to point out a few links that you can check out if you want to see what this theme looks like and see the code ahead of time as we go through this tutorial. First off, you can download this theme here from the WordPress theme directory, and you can install on your website the same way you would with any WordPress theme. And then the second thing you can do is you can come over here to the GitHub repository for the theme and download the files and play around with it and see what there is with this theme ahead of time, as well as follow along with what I'm doing here in this tutorial. The links for both of these are down in the description below if you want to go ahead and check them out. Now let's dive into this theme, and today's video is just going to be sort of like a high-level overview of sort of the design and what I'm really trying to do with this theme. So as I mentioned earlier in the intro, the theme name is Semplice Monospazio, which is Italian for simple monospace, which is basically the whole idea of this theme. It's a monospace theme that's minimalistic, very simple, nothing too big or too fancy, just something that we can create and then upload to the WordPress theme directory to really understand how to create block themes first, and then we can build crazier and bigger themes as we go along. So sort of what I like to do whenever I'm designing a theme is to just sort of create some style tiles. I go through things like the fonts, colors, typography, all those sorts of things. So come over here, just sort of have our base colors here. And then I like to add in some color options for people to choose from. And as you'll see later on, the new full site editing features really make changing the color styles a whole lot simpler. It's something that's built in. It's not something that you have to build in yourself with the theme. So again, sort of base colors, and then dark and light versions of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. And then there will also be sort of a dark mode theme that a user can use. Then we move on over here to the typography, and we're using Ubuntu Monospace for all of the fonts, headings, and body text. And I just sort of go through the heading levels, different font sizes, make sure that they look different than what you see like here with the body text. And then buttons, and this is how unordered list will look, ordered list, sort of your block quote and your pull quote. Those are two separate things, as you'll see, especially when we get into the theme.json file later on. And then here, I just quickly style sort of what the form elements are going to look like. Nothing drastic, just really simple outlines. Then we go over here to the table. Not going to have a whole lot of borders, but we will sort of alternate the sort of off-white, I guess you could call it, or light gray and white. And then this is what an image will look like, but the caption will be centered. This is what a cover block might look like. And then finally, just we're going to come over here to the calendar. Again, this is something that's very simple, not really fancy, basically. Again, it's a monospace, minimalistic theme. Nothing too big or too fancy. Again, this is sort of what a widget will look like with the heading and then this sort of border bottom and then the rest of the widget. And then we come over here to, this is what the base header will look like. Again, something simple, it'll be the site title, site description, and then the menu. And then similar with the footer, we have the copyright text. Then we'll have the site title again, and then the user can add in social media icons to various social media sites that they have. And then finally, just another menu. It can be the same as the one on the header, or it could be something completely different. All right, next up with the theme, I have a few different block patterns that I'm going to include. These aren't going to be anything super fancy, but they are something that might be useful for the user with their website. So first off is this sort of call out. It'll be a section that it can be placed maybe at the bottom of the body text of a single post template, or somewhere else, or the bottom of a page template, and something simple that has just this heading, some description text, and a button. And then we sort of repeat that with the different colors that we have. Next up is a sort of 2-column section. This could be maybe like a more fancier call out or whatever, or maybe like on the home page, it's instead of just being the post, maybe they want to have some text. And this can help them create that. You have the heading, description, and button, and then we add an image on the right. And again, like over here, we repeat this with the different colors that we have. And finally, we're going to go into 2 query block patterns that can be used and can be easily switched out with the index and archive and category templates, as we'll see later on in this series. So the 2 different types are, one's a grid and one is more of a list. So the grid is obviously a 3 by however many you want, and it's got the picture up here at top, the title, the category, the excerpt, and then the link to the post. And it repeats across, and then we also have different variations with the different background colors. And then the list view is a little bit similar. It's obviously more vertical. You have the title, category, description or excerpt, and button here on the left, and then over on the right you'll have the featured image for the post. And again, this one doesn't have the background for each color, but the button color does change, or for each color variation that we have with the theme. Next up, I went ahead and designed the page template for the theme, the default page template. And there are 2 sort of variations, and how we do this in the theme is a little bit different than how you might have previously with the legacy PHP themes. It's a little bit trickier to get right the first time, but once you see it once and you have the code example, you should be able to do it for your own theme pretty easily. So starting with the no sidebar option, obviously we have the header that we talked about before, and then this is just a simple page title, and then you have your body copy, whatever blocks are in the body copy, all that fun business. And it's simple, narrow. It's about 800 pixels wide. And then we have the footer, which we talked about earlier. And then the page with the sidebar template, again, it's simple. It's basically what we had over here. It's shifted over. This time, the width of all the content here is about 1200 pixels. So this shifts over, and then we just add in the widgets over here on the side. And when it's really cool to kind of see how a user might be able to pick out, do they want no sidebar like over here, or do they want the right sidebar like over here? Next up here is the single post template. Again, this is very similar to what we just did with the page template, although now with the post we have a little bit more features. Like we have the featured photo right here. We have the sort of the post meta, the written by, posted in, posted on, and tags right over here on the side. And then we'll have the next post, the previous post links down here, and then finally comments. And then it's the same thing with the left sidebar or the right sidebar layout. Moving on, here is the archive template. For each of the no sidebar and the right sidebar, I just in the designs mocked it up a little bit differently, using the grid version here as well as the list version. The list version will be our default for the archive, and obviously the index, the homepage, and all that fun business. But again, it looks very similar to what we've already looked at with the other 2 templates. We have the archive title here, and then just a simple underline. provides a little bit of separation, and then we have our list or gridded posts below that, some easy navigation, and then the footer, and very similar over here. So again, just if you haven't figured this out already, a lot of this is just very simple, very easy, because I wanted to create something that I could just figure out, okay, what gets into the WordPress theme directory and how exactly do you create a block theme without really adding too many bells and whistles right now. And then the search results look very, very similar to what we just saw with the archive, be the page title, and then our search bar, and then our list of posts. And again, this can all be changed out, as you'll see in the site editor, which is really, really cool. And finally, here we have our 404 page. Just again, something very simple. Just telling whoever's looking for a post or page that we can't find that page. And then they can either search the site for it, or we can list out our pages and or categories. And so basically that's it for the designs with this theme. Again, very simple, something that's very easy for us to explore and play around with and see just how do you create a block theme. And hopefully it'll be easy enough for you to follow along. And then once we get through this, maybe you can go on and create something that's bigger and bolder and has more features. So that's it for today. Next time we're going to dive into the theme.json file, which has a lot of really cool features, but it can be a bit tricky, especially if this is your first block theme. And then we'll go over the different styling that I kind of had to do with this theme to cover some things that the theme.json file doesn't cover. As I mentioned before, if you want to go ahead and check out a theme, you can download the theme off of the WordPress theme directory, or you can check out the GitHub repo. Again, all of those links are down in the description below. And if you want to see the rest of the videos in the series, as well as other videos on web development and code tutorials and so on and so forth, be sure to hit the subscribe button and to ring the bell for notifications. But that is it for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.